I haven't read these yet, personally. I only watched the live dev stream. We have the patch notes now, and the patch notes are going to be interesting, I think. So we have new unique items and legendary aspects. New unique items harboring immense power have been unearthed just in time for Season of Blood. The unique items below can only be acquired from playing a World Tier 4 in either Eternal or Seasonal realms. Test sets of the Dawning Sky, which is a generic unique pants. When you take damage from a non-physical damage type, any elemental damage, right? You gain +6 to +10% maximum resistances to that damage type for 6 seconds. This can only apply to one damage type at a time. This actually might be kind of insane for farming bosses. So the way the resistances work, which we'll probably get to down later if you didn't watch the live stream, is resistances are now additive. So it's really easy to calculate your resistances. And there's a cap of 75% for each element, just like in Diablo 2 or PoE, if you play those games. And you can increase the maximum up to 85%. In these games, mathematically increasing resistances beyond maximum is some of the best defensive things you can do against that damage type. So this fact, this is 10% maximum resistances, which will give you the cap of 85. Well, yeah, 85. Pretty sure it's the cap. It's pretty insane. But you'd have to use a flask on that. You can just use the pants on that. So if the pants are good otherwise, you might want these pants for basically every boss fight, because this is dynamic too. It just swaps to the effect you're taking damage from. So that could be really cool. Depends on the stats on it and what it's competing with for your build, right? I kind of like that though. Good option. Good insane option that's flexible for the whole resistance issue as well. Could be really good early on too while you're getting gear yet. Just put these on, help cover defensives and hardcore. Tusk Helm of Jorts the Mighty. It's the Barbarian Unique Helm. It's a new Barbarian Unique. When you gain Berserking while already Berserked, you have a 40 to 60% chance to become more enraged, granting 15% multiplicative damage increase, 2 Fury per second, and 10% cooldown reduction. You just keep stacking that? How long does the multiplicative bonus last? I'm guessing you can't keep stacking this. This is probably a separate cooldown, a separate buff rather, that has its own timer that gets refreshed. I forget what all the Helm uniques are and what the Helm legendary really competes with. It's Shaco, right? This is going to end up competing with Shaco long term, so long term you probably don't use this, but this might be really good getting started. Dolmen Stone, which is the new Druid unique amulet. Casting Boulder while Hurricane is active will cause your borders to rotate around you. This sounds sick and really cool for Hurricane Druid. I don't know what they currently use in Amulet slot. I don't think it's anything though. I think this is a free pickup for Tornado Druids. I think that's going to be a really cool Nature Druid item and also a really cool Tornado Druid pickup. I think it's going to be pretty best. The Scoundrel's Leathers, which is the Rogue unique chest. While you have unlimited energy from Inner Sight, your core skills have a 60 to 80% chance to spawn Cat Traps, Poison Trap, or Death Trap. That's a really high chance, right? 80% max roll. Assuming it is, the range is like the roll and item itself, and you can get max roll. I don't know if it's just a fixed 680 or random. Either way, I mean, during Inner Sight, you're just going to spam core skills and just get a ton of free traps, which is super good. Blood Moon Breaches, Necromancer unique pants. You minions have a 3 to 7% chance to curse enemies. Enemies affected by at least one of your curses take 70% multiplicative damage, increased overpowered damage from you. So that's made for the overpowered blood. It's called Blood Moon Breaches, it makes sense. The blood builds for Necromancer do overpower a lot, so that's a lot though. That's really easy to, because it's any curse, so it doesn't have to be the low curse on your minions. That's just a bonus chance to get curses. This can be your curses, right? The Blue Rose, which is a sorcerer. The Blue Rose, which is a sorcerer unique ring. Lucky hit. Damaging enemy has up to a 30% chance of forming an exploding ice spike, dealing 0.23, 2.35 cold damage. Triple this chance if the enemy is frozen. There's a 90% lucky hit chance if the enemy is frozen to explode an ice spike. I don't know how that fits for Sork at all going forward. Legendary aspects. The aspect below can be found on boots and amulets. So it's a mobility one. Generic mobility. Aspect of slaughter. You gain 20% movement speed. Just base. You just gain movement speed. You lose this bonus for 2.5 seconds, up to 5 seconds after taking damage. This is a generic move speed, out of combat move speed buff you can put on your boots. I could see that being potentially useful in some builds, especially if our damage is not that intense. But here's the thing, endgame builds are going to have more damage than they know what to do with anymore, right? If we're able to target farm Uber Uniques and we're going to get Godfathers and Shakos, there's no reason that we need, more damage on those items. So it's very likely endgame builds may end up using this for mobility reasons. Aspects below can be found on amulets, gloves, rings, and weapons. So these are offensives. It looks like every class is getting an offensive one, plus the generic one here. Generic aspect of elements. You gain 20 to 30% additive damage. Increase to a set of damage types for 7 seconds. This effect alternates between 2 sets. So this is the element of conventions for D4. Right? If you remember other conventions in D3, it was like the one that rotated element damage types, like fire, cold, one at a time. Instead of doing one buff at a time, it does groups of 3. Those 2 sets. So you're not waiting as long to get damage went up. And it's probably even more encourageable to play 2 damage types with this. Right? If you're a class that has fire and cold, like a Sork, if you're a Sork build that has a fire and cold, you can take advantage of both buffs at the same time. If you're a class that's like a druid doing lightning and poison, or if you're a shadow necro, physical shadow, really easy to get probably both windows. And then if your class that only does one, you just play around that one window every 7 seconds, which is pretty okay too. I don't know if it's going to be good enough to use if you just use one of these sets, because it's going to be 40 to 60 on a 2-hand weapon. Only additive though, and I feel like there's a lot of competition there. We'll find out. Wanton Rupture aspect. It's the new barbarian one. Your rupture does not remove the bleeding damage from enemies. This can occur once every 30 to 40 seconds. I've actually never played a rupture bleed spec yet. And from my understanding is that can lead to wonky, weird things. I don't know how good it is about the wonky, weird things though. This aspect may enable that again, but they will fix that again. So I don't know how this is as a baseline aspect. No idea. The Raw Might aspect. Druid offensive aspect. After you hit 15 enemies with your rare bear skills, your next rare bear skill will do 30 to 50% multiplicative damage and stun enemies for 2 seconds. So this is actually probably really meant for like a basic attack spam werebear kind of thing. If you have really fast attack speed, you can just maybe stack that real fast and then unleash it. Don't know. Don't play Druid. Aspect of Artful Initiative is the Rogue offensive. When you spend 100 energy, you release a cluster of exploding stun grenades that deal 0.2 to 0.3 total physical damage and stuns enemies for 0.5 seconds. Your grenade skills deal 50% more damage. Good for the grenade rogue, I guess. I don't play rogue. Aspect of the Long Shadow. Necromancer offensive aspect. Lucky hit. Your shadow damage over time effects have a 10 to 30% chance to grant 3 essence. Damage from your Shadow Blight key passive will always generate 2 essence. That sounds really good for Shadow Necro, which I know Jeff was very interested in. I wonder how good it actually is, though. Don't play Shadow Necro. The Sorcerer gets the Battle Castles aspect. Lucky hit. When your conjuration skills hit, you have up to a 30 to 40% chance to gain +1 rank to your conjuration skills for 12 seconds. This can stack up to 3 times. That's really interesting. Especially because of the 2-hand weapon, this chance probably goes up to 60 to 80. Not the +1 rank. It could be the +1 rank, though. Go up to 2. Gain +3 ranks to all your conjuration is really good for a conjuration Sork. If that is a viable build, which I'm gonna guess it is now. Gameplay updates. Accessibility. We have added more cursor icon options, including higher contrast icons. These can be found in the accessibility option menu. We have added an audio cue to signal when you're near traversal, a ladder or broken bridge to jump over. An audio cue to that. I guess it's probably an option, turn on or off. Maybe not. Items can now be marked as favorite. Items marked this way cannot be sold or salvaged, right? You can lock them in like Destiny does. Items in the stash can now be marked as junk or favorite. The stash can now be searched and filtered. Using the sell all junk option will not only sell junk in the active inventory tab, so you won't sell junk in your consumables or quest tab by accident. Extracted aspects with the same legendary power will now be grouped together when sorted in the inventory and stash. Quality of life update. The sorting of normal affixes and items have been improved and more consistent. My understanding of this is essentially, let's say you have a pair of gloves and a pair of boots, right? And they both have strength on them. That strength will appear at the top of the affix list on both items, because right now it's random. When you could have strength from the bottom and strength from the top, I think they're starting to organize it in a priority where, like, this, for example, main stats appear first, and then, say, mobility stuff appear second, and then resistance appear third, and then crit items appear fourth. When you look at an item, you can easily tell more easily, does this have main stat on it or not, instead of having to do all four, right? Could be wrong about that, but that's what I think is happening. Dungeons that have active whispers associated with them will now display the aspect name and description on the map tooltip. Streamer mode has been implemented. You can hide information. An additional option for hiding combat text. Auto-run has been added. We have added an in-game announcement for upcoming word boss spawns. The visual effect on the map to denote active Helltide is now also shown on the minimap. The minimap is zoomed out and displays a wider area. 3 new icons have been added to Helltide chests on the map, 1 each for jewelry, armor, and weapons, so you can more easily tell if it's, you know, a different kind of chest that you actually want. And we're getting 2 additional character slots, up to 12 from 10. Items. Enchant cost is now determined by a coefficient of base item power and item type instead of the item sell value. For rare items, this will generally result in a higher initial enchantment cost, but subsequent enchanting will continue to escalate at a significantly reduced rate than prior. Enchant costs will be generally reduced across the board for legendary items. For example, when enchanting a rare ancestral wand with 750 base item power, prior to the season, the first enchant was 56,000. After the season, it was 64,000, so a little more. The second enchant before is 282,000. The second enchant after is 128,000, so about half. Right? So the initial enchant is about 10k more. The second enchant is about 160k less. The third enchant was 338,000. The third enchant was 193,000. So again, 140-some thousand cheaper. So the first enchant is slightly more. The rest are much cheaper. When enchanting a legendary wand with 800 base item power, prior to season, this is legendary, right? So power it used to cost 164,000. Now it costs 72,000. So now legendaries are significantly cheaper to enchant. Before it was rares, like before you were encouraged to enchant a rare before you implemented on it for no good reason. That doesn't matter. Additionally, imprinting add-in sockets or upgrading will no longer increase the enchant cost, right? Before you were really encouraged to enchant first and then do all that stuff, right? Upgrade at the blacksmith, imprint it, add sockets. It would save you a lot of money. There was no good reason for that. Not a thing anymore. Developers note, enchant being determined by sell valor encourages players to re-roll a rare item before upgrading it at the blacksmith or imprinting an aspect on it. The overall formula for enchant cost has been adjusted to items adjustments need not to be done in specific order to be more cost effective. Additionally, the change reduces overall costs incurred when rolling an item. Yeah. Gems will no longer drop from regular sources and can now instead be crafted at a jeweler. Previous gem sources now drop gem fragments, which are stored in the materials tab, not your inventory. God bless. Crafted gems can be salvaged back into gem fragments at a jeweler. The equivalent number of gem fragments will drop less frequently than gems did from regular sources, but more frequently from whisper caches. That's good. There's way too many gems anyways, so like that's fine. And give us more of a reason to whisper caches is good. By moving gem acquisition to an active player action, it will no longer passively fill your inventory, reducing stress on overall space. We're also weighing the equivalent drops more towards targeted rewards to reduce the potential frequency of checking the materials tab during regular pay. The overall drop rate of elixirs has been reduced. So it was a 0.5% chance from any monster, and now it's a 0.02%. That's a significant reduce on elixir drops. We're trying to reduce stress on players' consumable inventory tab, similar to our changes made for gems, we hope players will be interactive elixirs they purposely crafted. That's fine to me. I got my elixirs primarily from Helltide chest and crafting, and that wasn't changed at all. Other than that, that was this kind of clutter. Busted flasks I didn't care about or use much. I'm okay with that, I think. We'll see how it plays out. Whisper caches will now always only reward items of a specific equipment slot instead of having a chance to include a random item of any equipment slot. So if you get a hand Whisper cache, it's going to drop 2 hands if it does drop an extra item. The drop chance of Scroll of Escape has been reduced by 0.1 to 0.025. I actually really like that. I know this was like a hot topic in the hardcore community. I personally think you got way too many of these. It made it way too comfy of a game to escape from. And then the fact that they're now DC protection makes it even more valuable, so I think that's good, personally. Cheat Death, I also have issues with, but we'll get to that. If they get to, who knows. Fiend Roses and Forgotten Souls are no longer required to upgrade non-sacred or ancestral items. So these are no longer required to upgrade items. Oh, I guess it's probably non-sacred or non-ancestral items. Oh, they're trying to say it's only for sacred items now. Are they trying to say these are only used for sacred items and not for the base 1 of 50 or the max level items? I'm not sure. Item power ranges for sacred and ancestral items have been adjusted. So previously, sacred would go from 625 to 720. Now it's 625 to 750. They upped it by 30 rather. Ancestor used to be 725 to 820. Now it's 780 to 925. The new max is 925, right? Here's an example. Sacred, at 55, a drop can be 625 to 700. Every level, as we know, every level, right, so at 56, will increase the floor and the max by 2. Right, so now it's 627, 702. That means at level 70, right before you're ready to enter War Tier 4, the drop range is 655 to 730. Ancestral, level 75 will drop 780 to 855. Again, one more level is 2 points. Level 100 is 830 to 925. Right, now post 100, they mentioned the ceiling stops increasing and the floor increases by 1. So at this point, you can see how it goes up 1 point per level. That's so when you do higher level nightmare scissors and higher level content, it makes it more rewarding because you're more likely to get the max level items. But you can still get the max level items from level 100 creatures. And I'm assuming this is from monster level, right? This is the power range for items dropped from monsters at a listed level. Yeah. This isn't based on your level, this is based on the monster level. So still, if you get the ancestral stuff early, you're still gonna get the good ancestral stuff, right? Acquisition rate for Forgotten Souls from scavenging items have been adjusted. Scavenging a secret item has a 5% chance to grant Forgotten Soul. Scavenging an ancestral item has a 10% chance to grant Forgotten Soul. 2-handed weapons can grant up to 2 from Savage. All over equipment still grant 1. Forgotten Souls became much easier to get in Season Millennium. Helltide was designed to be the primary source of Forgotten Souls, but being able to acquire them through other means disincentivized players from playing Helltide. We want to encourage players to participate in Helltide more, but not want to completely shut down alternative sources. So we have broadened the types of items that can grant when Savage, but decrease the drop rate. Previously, only weapons could grant them, but it was guaranteed. The following loot and adjustments have been implemented per War Tier. War Tiers 1 and 2 have been unchanged. War Tier 3, only legendary, unique, uber unique, and secret rare items will drop. Players will instead receive additional crafting resources. War Tier 4, only legendary, unique, uber unique, and ancestral rares. Players will receive additional crafting resources instead. Gold drop rates have been increased on 3 and 4 to balance these out. Right, we're not going to see, example War Tier 4, we're not going to see sacred and non-sacred items anymore. They're just going to be crafted automatically for us, which is just going to help a lot with picking up loot. Really good change. I'm also a fan of this acquisition thing for Forgotten Souls, because Helltide did become decentivized, and that was bad. This game is, they need to give you a reason and encouragement to all the gameplay loops, and if a gameplay loop is unrewarding, you just won't do it, and if a gameplay loop is so terrible no one wants to do it, and that's the issue with it, then it should be changed from there, right? I like Helltide, so I think it's good. Dungeons. Teleporting to a Nightmare dungeon now takes the player inside the dungeon instead of teleporting to his entrance. Nightmare sigils are now rewarded upon completing a Nightmare dungeon instead of only activating the final boss. Monsters in Season of Blood Nightmare dungeons will spawn sooner to the entrance. This is meant to help reduce the amount of walking needed before your first encounter. Nightmare dungeon affects adjustments. Direct damage from major affixes can now be passively dodged. Example, Blood Blister and Death Pulse. So dodge is better now. So buff and dodge. Log in, boys. Backstabbers. Monsters do X% more damage attacking from behind. Previously, the new one is close monsters attack from behind cause you become vulnerable, and vulnerable damage increase is increased by X. Death Pulse will no longer trigger on monsters that already have a death explosion. Death Pulse will no longer spawn on top of each other. A Death Pulse will only occur if there's an open space around the monster. Drifting Shade. Persistent duration reduced 2 seconds to 3 seconds. Respawn time increased by 2 seconds. Lightning Storm. Avoiding shock damage in the bubble grants you movement speed. It will only begin once players are in combat, and will only begin if the player has a direct path to where the bubble would be. No more hopping down a ladder and it spawns above you and on the fucking ladder. Happened multiple times in hardcore runs. Crit Strike Resistance. It used to be monsters took X% less damage for crit strikes. Now it's monster attacks reduce the damage of your crit strikes for 3 seconds by X% stacking up to Y. So now it still reduces crit strike damage they receive, but it's not passive. It only happens once they attack you and it ramps up. Same for Overpower. Potion Breakers used to be monster attacks from a distance have X% chance to disable your healing potion for 2 seconds. Now, as monster attacks from a distance increase the cooldown of your new X potion by X seconds to Y seconds. That's a really good change, actually. So, it's no longer that you just can't use your potions all of a sudden, it's just your cooldown's longer, which feels a bit better. Using Evade leaves a pool of poison behind to damage enemies. Now, using Evade leaves a damaging pool of poison on the first enemy you evade through, or at your destination. It's a bit better. It should be easier to target the poison damage on actual monsters, right? Resistance Breakers. Sacred. Monster attacks from a distance reduce all resistance by 3%, stacking up to 15%. Ancestral. Monster attacks from a distance reduce all resistance by 5%, up to 25%. That's interesting. So that kind of means that if you want to be resistance cap guaranteed while doing these kind of nightmare sigils, you're going to want to have 25% extra resistances, which might be important for high level nightmares. I'm assuming they're going to try to tune it for that to be the case. They could fail on that, but I'm assuming they're going to try to tune that. Thorns. Previously, it would just increase your thorns by X. Now, is after an attack enemy, your thorns are increased by X, up to Y, as new stacks. So this makes it so it's good for people who don't even have thorns at all. Glyph experience has been increased across the board, with a significant increase at earlier tiers. Overall, though, it's about 19% faster. And many dungeons have received visual updates and layer improvements. We received feedback that some dungeons lacked the visual diversity and required quite a bit of backtracking to compete, making it feel cumbersome. We believe our adjustment dungeons in these areas will remedy player frustration, but we'll continue to listen to community feedback and make additional changes as needed. Circa endgame activities. Legion events will now spawn every 25 minutes instead of 30. Every Legion event will now have a Whisper objective associated with it. That's a huge increase, actually. Additional life scaling for Legion event monsters have been increased. We received feedback that players don't often fight monsters during Legion event because of the monsters dying too quickly. We've increased the health of those monsters to compensate, adding a little bit more of extra difficulty for Legion events. The experience award for completing Legion event has been increased by 75%. So Legion events appear more often, way more XP, and now have a Whisper attached to them. The time between ward boss spawns have been reduced from 6 hours to 3.5 hours. So they're going to spawn way more rapid, and it's going to desync the time way more. So if you work 9 to 5, and you can only play from 8 to 9, and a ward boss isn't up ever during that window, at some point it will be now throughout the week, right? It will just naturally desync every day, and bosses will spawn at different hours throughout the week. Ward boss health and damage have been increased. The quality awards received for defeating a ward boss have been significantly increased. A warning that indicates that a ward boss will spawn now broadcasts an hour in advance versus 30 minutes previously, and players are also notified 15 minutes before a ward boss spawns. Ward bosses now become immune 2 seconds after beginning their escape. I don't know what the last bit means at all, but nonetheless, 4 bosses stonks up. The silent chests. These are the stupid ass chests that you open with keys, I think. Now spawn in areas where Habitat is active. The tier for Nightmare Dungeon reward from Whisper Caches will now always be within 5 levels of the highest level Nightmare Dungeon the player has completed. Sigil levels will still respect the minimum and maximum determined by ward tier, right? So level 20 is max in Nightmare Dungeon. So even if you completed a ward tier 4 Nightmare Dungeon level 50 and you did a Whisper Cache ward tier 3, you're not going to get a 50 Nightmare Sigil, right? So it's 20. Nonetheless, that's a really good change. Various quality of life updates for Whispers, such as moving the altars to bring collective resources to a more central location and reduce the number of monsters needed to slain to complete certain objectives. Whisper Caches will now also reward significantly more gold and increase gem fragments. So Whisper Caches are going to be a really good source for specific items when you first enter a ward tier. Be a really good source for gold, gems, and a really, really much easier time to do them. Which is going to be nice because farming Whispers is important for that one boss, for the one uber unique target form. Mounts. The overall responsiveness of mounts has been increased. Mounts are now less likely to get stuck or slow down. Mounts automatically jumped over traverses more consistently. The mouse cursor no longer needs to be at the edge of the screen for keyboard and mouse players to activate 4-speed mouse. Oh my god, God bless. Base mount movement speed has been increased by 14%. The mount's top speed remains unchanged. This will help in town. This is a quality of life for town, because right now, it's faster to get off your horse, evade a bunch, get back on your horse. The speed boost from Sport has had a duration increased by 50%, and using Sport now allows mounts to break through barricades, which is this more engaging gameplay while traversing, which is good. Cooldowns. Mount cooldown has been reduced from 10 seconds to 5 seconds. The cooldown appearing after you've been forced from taking too much damage is reduced to 15 seconds from 30 seconds, and the cooldown of the mount combat skill, like once you get on the mount, right, it takes time, is now only 3 seconds out of 10, which is massive as well. Town adjustments. An Oculus has set up shop at the Tree Whisper Waypoint. The Tree Whisper Waypoint now has an Oculus and a blacksmith, but no drill crafter, right? So that place is going to be the prime location to go to if you don't need a drill crafter, which I guess is almost always, right? I mean, the drill crafter is only useful to add sockets to drillery the first time, and then you're good to go. I would still like to see a drill crafter added there, so that's just the prime spot to go to. Additional stashes have been added to capital cities near important vendors, and stashes have been added to all small towns with waypoints. The Purveyors of Curiosity, the gambling guy, right, with the bubbles, have set up shop closer to the waypoints in the following locations, all different towns. And the following waypoints will now automatically unlocked for characters to skip the campaign. You get 2 per zone. This just helps you explore the map more fluid and easier when you first make a character. Monsters. All monsters and bosses across the game have been rebalanced around all the other changes slated for Season of Blood to ensure the overall difficulty of the game does not drastically change. They've mentioned on stream they want monster difficulty to be about the same. So that will mean buffing and nerfing monsters because we'll get in more or less power at different points, right? Level scaling in the open world has been adjusted. Levels of monster are counted open world will scale with the player's level, with a minimum and maximum level determined by this ward tier. This is how it worked at launch in preseason, right? And then they changed it for season 1, and everyone hated it. So now we're back to how it worked before. If you remember that. We've generally reduced the evasiveness of many monsters. The cooldown for teleport cast by night monsters has been increased, and the range has been decreased. The spider host cold explosion now chills instead of freezes. The below the corpse fiend death explosion no longer has knockback. Spider hosts, below the corpse fiends, and fly hosts will no longer spawn with the fire enchanted or plague bearer affixes. The seething abomination ground slime ability now also spawns a poison pool under the player, and ghost monsters that receive a visual upgrade. All quality of life stuff, less knockbacks, easier to see enemies, etc. Experience updates. Experience updates. I really should have moved my camera, actually. Not too late. We're over here now. Incense now grant a bonus to experience, and they persist after death. Incense are the group buffs that you would throw on only for the hardest of content and almost never use them because you forget about them. Now they're worth using. The experience bonus and they persist forever. So now you have a reason to pop incense once an hour and elixir once every 30 minutes. Just more reason to craft and engage in that crafting economy. The experience bonus for being in a party and for playing higher ward tiers have been made multiplicative to increase effectiveness later in the game. Big note, that's party right there, which means being in a party even more valuable than it used to be. Much more valuable. Experience gained from killing high level monsters have been significantly increased. Example varies of experience gained from a normal monster before any of the bonuses, right? So 1 to 50, unchanged. Level 55 used to be 370, now it's 425. Level 70 was 445, now it's 700. And level 90 was 545, now 850. Several 30% or something like that. It's a big change. Experience reward for completing individual whispers, cashing in grim favors, and open helltide chests have been increased. So, big increase to opening helltide chests on 3 and 4. Massive on 4, actually. Rewards for turning in grim favors are massively buff for tier 1 and 2. Less so for 3 and 4. So they really want you to do grim favors to level up now, which makes sense because keep in mind, Renown is now account wide forever. You don't have to do Renown ever anymore. So this is just a way to encourage you to level 1 to 50, which makes sense because that content is available 1 to 50, right? Individual whisper completion, where tier 1 whispers have been increased by 100%, tier 2, 75, and tier 3, 150. Whispers are going to be giga valuable for leveling now. Okay. Miscellaneous. Necromancer minions and druid companions are now much likely to be. Necromancer minions and druid companions are now much less likely to target invulnerable enemies. Effects that guarantee an overpower on your next cast will always be consumed on the next appropriate cast, regardless of whether a target is hit. If you have multiple such effects active, only one will be consumed per cast. All renown rewards now persist between seasons. The level at which players will receive the priority quest for unlocking next ward tier difficulty has been increased from 40 to 48, from 60 to 68. Players are free to attempt this capstone dungeon at any level, but will raise the level at which the player is prompted to attempt them. The new players don't feel encouraged to attempt challenges that may be too difficult for them. That's a good change. As long as I can still do it at 40 or 60, whatever, that's great. I think that's a fair thing to do for new players because I know plenty of new players will on Twitter complaining they can't do the content. So this is to help the progression for those players. As long as I'm still allowed at 56 to go bang my head against the World Tier 4 Capstone Dungeon, perfect. Rewards for completing side quests have been improved to scale with higher ward tiers. Finally, we have a reason to do side quests in the game. Increased veiled crystal drops from savage catches, slightly increased rare leather and rare orbs, and they will now also contain an item. Great. Effects of various traps in the world have been adjusted. Barrels now just have a one-time explosion, no longer have a lingering effect. Great. They inflict more chill monsters and can be passively dodged. Bear traps, duration reduced from 3 to 1, remains 3 seconds for monsters though. So it's just reduced for you, but still good for monsters. You can now passively dodge it. Mines are now applied knockback. Cold mines chill players and freeze monsters. So cold mines won't freeze you anymore, but they still freeze monsters. Lightning mines stun monsters, not you. And all the effects can be passively dodged. Rock drop now applies a stack and slow up to 60% when the player is hit. And they will still knock down monsters, so it's not you. So less CC on all traps, but the monsters still get CC'd. Increase monster density for the following events, which as far as I can tell is all the dungeon events. Right, Curse Shine, yeah, I think it's dungeon events. And increase the speed of progression for the following events, time between waves, time to start, time to end. Same idea. So they'll increase the density and make them much faster, which is great. They're buffing the health of the NPCs in these events as well, so they don't die in one hit at higher levels. And the event a hardcore player disconnects while in combat as score or escape will automatically be consumed to teleport the player's character back to safety. Now we're in the meat and bones. This should be the new stuff, right? Bounds updates. Oh, I'm gonna get some water here. Alright, we're in the meat of it now. Our goal for unique items is that they feel impactful to your build and create a moment of excitement upon dropping. Some unique items will follow so this goal. We will update them in a few ways to ensure that these items are distinctly different from other items and are appealing. They're going to add new effects that did not exist yet on items. They're going to add affixes that already exist with a much higher value than normal. They're going to add affixes in a slot where they normally wouldn't exist. And they're going to update unique powers to be more desirable. So, the Butcher Cleaver, for example, is getting the damage to crowd control enemies affix increased by 160%. So it's just going to do way, way more damage to crowd control enemies, right? It used to be 12%. It's going to increase by 160. Firstborn, the freeze duration is being increased by 70%. And the core damage affix is being replaced with attack speed, which is great because core damage is not very useful for most builds. Attack speed is useful for basically everything. Mother's Embrace, the overpowered damage affix is replaced with bonus max life. That's great. Number of enemies hit require resource refund from 5 to 4. That's still going to be kind of ass, I think, but better. So the lucky hit chance to heal is being replaced by gain damage on Fist of Fate, which is massive. And Andorra's Visage, which is an uber unique that no one saw. The poison with this affix is increased by 32%, which is pretty meaningful. Prior to Season of Blood, resistances stacked inverse multiplicative, with each additional source of resistances become less effective. Example, you had 3 sources of 20% resistances. The first source would provide a full 20%. The second source would add 16%. The third would add 12.8, totaling 48.8. Right. Time of Season of Blood, they will now stack additively. And they're now capped at 70. So example, if you have 30% and you get 20% more, you just have 50. Just simple, easy. Resistance boosting elixirs now also increase the player's maximum resistance value. They added a new resistance category within the stats section of inventory. Word tiers 3 and 4 will now apply a 25% and 50% penalty to all elements instead of a multiplier. So, most like in Diablo 2 or PoE, when you enter a new word tier, resistances become less effective, which means you need more of them. It balances out because you get more of them on gear. You get much more on gear, right? Single resistance affixes can now roll on pants. Single resistance affixes now contribute a maximum value of 35% resistance to a fully upgraded normal item, 48% for sacred, and 65% for ancestral. So you're gonna need 120% res for every element in Ward 2 or 4, right? It's gonna be 120 minus 50 is 70, which is cap, right? But a single item can be 65%. Alright, so two resistances stacked towards one resistance is already beyond cap that you need, so it should be very easy to hit it. Keep in mind, we're also getting all res, right? 9 at normal, 12 from sacred, and 16 for ancestral. And rings inherently AFX now give plus to all elements and plus single res instead of 2 single res. So it will now be like, instead of being poison and fire, it will now be all res plus fire or all res plus poison or whatever. The maximum value is +6/+6 for normal, 8/8 for sacred, and 10/10 for ancestral. So our rings are going to give us 20% all res default, which means we only need 100% from other items, right? If I have one item, we're almost already done. Amulet inherent effects have been adjusted to 14 for normal, 19 for sacred, and 24 for ancestral. So never all res. So we're going to get, what is that, 44 all res to all elements on just all rings and amulets passively without even trying, which really means all we need is about 1 max roll for every resistance type, and we're going to be good to go. Just about. So, should be really easy to gear for that, but you will have to gear for it. You will have to keep that in mind and gear around. Single resistance values on gems have been adjusted. So crude 8. Yeah, I mean, it just goes up to 30 now. Diamond versus all res goes up to 5%. So resistant gems are more impactful now, more desirable. Single resistant paragon nodes have been adjusted to +10% on rare nodes and +5 on magic nodes. All res paragon nodes have been adjusted to +3 on rare nodes and +1.5 on magic nodes. Single resistant elixirs have been adjusted. So no, it goes from +10 res with +2 max res to +6 max res and +30 res. Resist all has been adjusted to 25% all. The level required to craft this elixir has been reduced from 90 to 35. This is very crafted very, very early on. Very, very early on usable all res. Does not increase max resistance at all. This generic resistance. Storm of the Wild's incense was previously increased lightning, cold, and poison resist by 12% for each nearby player, and now is increased lightning, cold, and poison resist by 15%, and their maximum res by 2% for each nearby player. That's pretty insane for word bosses and for group content. Desert Escape was increased fire and shadow resistance by 7.5 and armor by 75. It's now fire, cold, and shadow by 15, and the max resistance by 2. So this is lightning, cold, and poison. This is fire, cold, and shadow. So it's just still 3. It's a different 3. Soothing was increased all res by 10 and armor. It's now increased all res by 10 and max res by 1 and armor on 150. Intelligence now grants 0.025% all res per 1 point of intelligence instead of 0.5. They're really good. I mean, you're going to end up with a couple hundred res from that, you know? Not a couple hundred intellect, which is going to be, 10-20% all res. To be very good. And that users will have a much easier time gearing, which is maybe a huge boost for them. Huge boost, maybe. Disobedience, armor value has been increased from a maximum of 30% to 66%. Stone Veiled, armor value has been increased from a maximum of 10% to 30%. Armor contribution percent, non-physical damage reduction from armor and resistance are not split. Resistances now contribute their full value to non-physical damage reduction, and armor no longer contributes to non-physical damage reduction, and not only reduces physical damage. So armor is being buffed, but armor now only... It's being buffed by numbers, but it only affects physical damage now, not elemental, right? Armor effects has been increased by 160%, and armor while in werewolf form and total armor on werewolf form glyphs have been increased by 130, right? Again, armor is just being increased around the board. Damage bucket update. Oh my god. Builds that utilize critical strike damage and vulnerable damage have been disproportionately powerful. This is because these stats were previously calculated as part of the separate damage buckets that were fully multiplicative when combined with other damage bonuses. In order to promote greater build diversity, we are changing how critical strike, vulnerable, and overpowered damage is calculated. These damage types will now always have a baseline multiplicative bonus. Additional sources of bonus critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, overpowered damage will be additive instead of multiplicative to other damage bonuses. Overpower will also receive additional additive damage based on your maximum health and fortify amounts. This change represents an overall decrease in damage output through adjusting monster scaling to ensure the best class builds are still as powerful as before. This change is not intended to lower the power of the best builds, but rather allow more builds to reach the same level of power. We've also added a variety of mechanics to classes that encourage them to chase other stats for multiplicative bonuses, rather than always chasing crit strike and vuln damage. So, overpower. Attacks now always deal up to 50% multiplicative increased damage based on your current life percentage. Overpower attacks gain plus 2% damage per 1% of your max life. Overpower attacks gain plus 2% damage per 1% of your base life that you have in bonus life above your base life. All overpower damage effects have been increased by 50%. Overpower damage paragon glyphs have been increased by 33%. The overpower is getting kind of buffed all around. Now, quick strikes will now also always do a 50% multiplicative. Right, so crit strike is still a multiplicative bucket. It's just you can't change it anymore. It's just 50% increase, right? Crit strike will give you a 50% multiplicative damage bonus. That's it. You can increase your chance to crit to get that more often, and additional crit strike damage is just additive to your base damage, right? So, getting crit strike chance will be really good. Crit strike damage is going to be as good as any other added damage for your build. Crit strike damage effects and crit strike damage of bone, earth, imbued, and werewolf skills have been increased. Crit strike damage effects on swords has been increased, and crit strike damage paragon glyphs have been increased to balance it out, right? Vulnerable is multiplied by 1.20%. Again, same idea. If you hit a vulnerable enemy, you're doing 20% multiplicative damage. You cannot increase that. That's 20% multiplicative damage, which is a lot, but at the same time, if you can't get vulnerable easily, there might be a way for most builds to now justify not having vulnerable, because you might be able to get more damage from other sources. You're still going to want to get it though if you can. It's not as massive, right? And they've also increased the damage bonus ones to help balance it out because it's additive now instead of multiplicative, right? So you're still going to be interested in crits and vulnerable damage. It's just for a lot of builds where that was a huge opportunity cost, it's not going to be worth getting anymore, and that build would still be worth playing and better now. The effect of the Death's defense passive which prevents like amounts of minions from taking more than 30% of the maximum life and damage in one hit, with all points allocated to it, has now been made an inherent attribute for all summons, druid commands including. So minions will not take more than 30% of max life in one single hit damage, which is really strong for boss fights. Oh. Okay, when is this ward boss? Hold on. I'm trying to do a ward boss at the same time. 25 minutes, okay. Alright. The loot chase to find an item with ideal stats for your build is core in Diablo experience. We want to encourage increased diversity in itemization and make creating your build more interesting. To achieve this, we're adding a variety of ways for classes to skill or specific stats in interesting ways, particularly through using key passives and Paragon. For example, Barbarian Hemorrhage Legendary Paragon will now multiply increase your bleeding damage by portioning damage vulnerable by enemy stat. The remaining of the class changes were aimed at improving underused skills, aspects, and powers, as well as addressing other pressing issues. For example, we have reworked several Paragon glyphs for the Sorcerer and Necromancer who did not have appropriate places on the Paragon boards. Barb, my bread and butter. The bonus damage granted while Berserking is active is now multiplicative instead of added, which is a huge increase to the Berserk build in general, especially the Berserk Keystone pass. Enhanced Bash, Fortify amount change from being based on base life to max life. Upheaver damage was increased from 0.7 to 0.77, which is not that much, but it's still a decent amount, still 10%. And on top of that, keep in mind, damage is very different now. The way damage is going to work in this patch, it's very different than before. That might be enough to change it, we're not sure. Furious Upheaver, bonus damage per stack increased from 5 to 12, which is massive. But max stacks reduced from 10 to 6. So it used to be 50%, now it's 72%? Is that what? Yeah, 72%. So it is a buff and it's much easier to happen. Rally Cry now gives you Fortified base on max life. Iron Skin, Fortified base on max life. War Cry, Fortified base on max life. Supreme Wrath of Berserker, the maximum damage bonus is capped now at 100% multiplicative. So really strong. It was something that needed to cap eventually, so this is good. Additional functionality for Enhanced Rupture. The damage is increased by 10% for each 50 strength you have. Interesting. Warrior's Rupture, attack speed increased from 30 to 40. Also really interesting for the Rupture build. Also making it more desirable for all builds, honestly. And the Rupture increased healing. Passive. The Fury gain from using two-hand weapons on your basic skills are increased by a decent margin. The max life increased is by 3%-ish. Down reduction from elites has been increased by 3%. And thick skins increase from base life to max life. So overall, not the insane changes to skills. Like this is what I was talking about earlier. I think we're going to see a lot more class changes come announced at BlizzCon and soon after, either for late season or early season 3, once they have all the data on how the new builds are working, the new damage formulas. This was a lot of work, getting the new damage formulas out and making the game around that function well. So I'm not surprised that we're not getting a fully function out class remake yet, because we're getting all that stuff instead, which I think is great. Paragon. Decimator was previously two-handed slash weapons attacks have an 8% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds, which was a meme. Now is each time you make an enemy vulnerable, your damage is increased by 10% for 5 seconds. Overpowering a vulnerable enemy now grants an additional 10%, which is great. Bonebreaker used to be overpowers if your two-hand bludgeoning weapons stun enemies for 1 second and grant your 10% max life as Fortify. Now it's every 12 seconds your next skill is guaranteed to overpower, which is fantastic. Flawless Technique, which was damaging enemies with one-handed weapons, increased your crit strike chance by 1% for 2 seconds. So now it's it's 4 seconds instead of 1%, right? And the max amount is being increased from 5 to 8. Carnage, which is while berserking, your crit strike chance is increased. So critical strikes increase your attack speed. It used to be 8% max, now it's 16% max. Warbringer, it's getting its Fortify amount increased from 12 to 15. Weapon Master used to be swapping, got your 3 Fury. Now it's swapping weapons, got you 4% of your maximum Fury. That's massive, actually, for a walking arsenal. Hemorrhage used to be enemies that have been affected by your bleeding for 3 seconds or more take 12% multiplier damage from you. Now it's your bleeding enemies. Your bleeding damage is increased by 50% if your total amount of your damage to your vulnerable enemies bonus. So now it's a way for you to get more bleed damage by stacking vulnerable dam. This is one of those interesting build things, right? A bleed build will have the chance to stack multiplicative damage by buffing vulnerable dam. Blood range is killing a bleed enemy has a 10% chance to grant berserking. Now it's your damage that is increased by 25% multiplicative of total damage of your damage while berserking bonus. So just more multiplicative damage for berserking builds. The of Ancestral Force, which is a hammer that ancient quicks outwards, dealing increased damage. Now it's just it quicks outwards and does increase damage as a flat range, which is great. The Earth Chakra aspect, which is weapon swap 10 times the overpower, is now 8. And we're now hopping a next non-basic attack, which is also pretty huge. As the main problem was keeping track of using an actual skill and not your basic attack, and now it's guaranteed to not happen on basic attack. Super nice. Unique items. The Magnum Opus. Damage to vulnerable enemies AFX. Right, it has the vulnerable AFX. It is being replaced with Maximum Fury at 150% of normal value. So now you're going to get more Fury when using this. And damage per Fury increase is getting buffed as well. That's a really good change. Really good change. Because this Max Fury thing is actually kind of insane for a lot of builds. And also makes this way better as a unique. As a Wrath, the non-physical damage AFX is increased by 120%. So if you're playing I don't know, the Upheaver Howl thing where it burns. I don't know what else would use this right now. What do the non-physical damage of barbs do? I don't know. Hellhammer. Quick Shark damage AFX is replaced with bonus ranks to Upheaval. And damage bonus has been increased by 150%. The Ancestor Oath. It used to be you threw your spears and it would slow enemies. Now you throw your spears and you do increased damage. Right? Increased multiplier damage. Really good. Overkill. Critical strike chance against injured enemies replaced with ranks of death blow. Really good. Ranks of Rupture AFX replaced with Rupture cooldown reduction. Really good. Ballot, this is what I'm hoping for right here. This is what I'm going to do. Bonus ranks of Frenzy increased by double. Used to be 3, now you can get 6. Which is really, actually really important. Damage reduction while injured. Replace a bonus Maximum Fury. Damage reduction from close enemies. It's being increased by Maximum Fury, which is really good with this Magnum Dong. Magnum Opus. That's actually insane. I think Frenzy is going to be nuts. Those two changes are really good for Frenzy. I think Frenzy is going to be really good. 100,000 steps. Dexterity AFX has been doubled. Damage skills that swap weapons have been increased. And the cooldown for free ground stomps was reduced from 30 to 15. Really good change. Damage reduction from bleeding enemies AFX increased by 15%. Which is nice. Non-physical damage AFX replaced with damage. Really good. Its SP AFX replaced with critical strike chance against close enemies. Really good. Critical strike chance is going to be really good. Improving the attack speed of Warwind is a fantasy one players to be able to chase. However, the interaction between the stat and skill is inconsistent. Okay. Druid. I don't play Druid, so I'm just gonna run through this about my opinion because I don't play it, and I don't really know what this means for the game. But Mad Wolf Gi, which is the werewolf form, is like your true form, has poison damage AFX replaced with damage at 140%. So it is now just, instead of poison damage, it's now just raw damage. And the physical damage AFX is replaced with max life. So it used to be poison and physical, now it's just one AFX is all damage and you get max life instead. And Sensible Fury, which is the verbal form, is like your true form. Overpower damage is increased by double, and total armor on verbal form is being increased by 180. The Wolf Companion are infused with the power of the storm. Ranks of Wolf AFX increased by 66. Companion skill damage replaced with bonus max life, and Potion drop rate AFX with damage reduction. That's really good because Potion drop rate was ass. Deliberating Roar and Blood Hell do increase poison damage. Damage while shapeshifting is being doubled. Damage while healthy AFX is replaced with core skill damage, and the damage dealt to poison enemies is now increased by 10% multiplicative for each one willpower you have. So you got willpower stack You encourage to stack willpower to get more damage there. The 100 Zenith, which is granted bonus when you kill with a shape-shifting skill, is now damage while shape-shift effects is increased. Bonus ranks to the quick shift passive has been increased by 200. Quick strike damage increase has been replaced by quick strike chance, which is really good because again, quick strike damage is way less useful. Quick strike chance is gonna be really good now. Overpower damage or bear skills effects replace the bonus ranks to the highlight and sensitive passive. Skills. First, Earth Spike. Fortify amount change from being base life to max life. Right? Same idea. Fortify is going from base life to max life for all the stuff that it can. Ravens are getting buffed. Passive damage and active damage. More crit strike chance. Rabbies is being buffed. It spreads faster. The spread speed bonus has been reduced though. Actual spread speed remains unchanged. Okay, so the buff in the base speed and nerfing the natural rabies speeds, it's gonna be the same though if you take that. But if you don't take it, it's better. Base life to max. Fortify is not max, right? Trample, knockback reduced. Trample, fortify change from base to max, right? Passives. It used to be all res. Okay, it was non-physical resistances, and now it's just all res instead. So it's the same idea. Interval for lightning bolts reduced from 8, 15, 12 to 14, 11, 8 for charged atmosphere. Electric shock is lucky hit chance to mobilize increased. And bonus damage decreased. Thick high. Base life to max life, right? All base life to max life, fortify stuff. Casting an Earth skill. The thing with 10 chance to trigger a free storm skill of the same category and vice versa. I think the new thing is the fact that the casts now count as both Earth and Storm skills, which should have a unique interaction for some items probably. Earth sign strength is well healthy. You do want to increase damage and increase overpower damage. Lupin ferocity is the guaranteed crit strike bonus is increased by
Voltron
140.
952 demands I paint. Show me how frenzy is gonna be nuts.
Yeah, let me finish the notes and I'll paint it. I'll paint it up. Well, I gotta do the war boss. I'll do after that. Frenzy's gonna be nuts though. I'll absolutely show you though. Aspect of the ramping rare burst crit strike damage bonus amount now has a maximum 200%. So camping the unlimited potential of it. Paragon. Urban Devastation used to be Earth skills do a 30% increased damage to enemies affected by crowd control. Now they do increased crit strike damage, increased by 25% of the total amount of your bonus damage to crowd control. So it's multiplicative, right? This is one of those things where you can stack multiplicative damage to Earth skills by stacking crowd control damage. This is a really interesting build crafting idea, you know? Thunderstruck used to be skills deal increased crit strike damage against vulnerable or immobilize. Now its storm skills do bonus damage equal to 50% of your total amount of your damage to close and damage to distant enemies. So same idea. If you're using storm skills, you can stack multiplicative damage by stacking damage to close and distance. Necromancer. The effects where your minions inherent thorns used to be separated, now this is all minions. And there's a new affix for minions inherent crit strike chance. That's actually pretty huge for minion builds. Cooldown reduction can now appear on shields, and shields now have armor, which is pretty good for tankiness reasons. Blood orbs now also heal your minions for 15% maximum life when you pick them up. The Prime Army of Dev has an increased chance to leave a corpse from 15 to 100%. It's just guaranteed now to leave a corpse. Base life to max life, fortify changes. Bone Prison, fortify amount change from being based on base life to max life, and decompose time to make a corpse reduced from 2 to 1.5 seconds. Passives. Death's Defense was the one that's now, it used to be you minions can't take more than so much damage in a hit, and it's now baseline. So they're changing it to, instead of that, you minions now gain increased armor and increased res to all. Make them tankier that way. So, really good change. Minions be way more tanky than they used to be. Terror now applies to your shadow damage rather than the darkness skills. The first bonus now applies to chilled enemies. And its second bonus applies to frozen enemies. Huh. Stand alone. The description of this passive has been updated to increase damage reduction. So it used to be increased damage reduction for each active minion. Sorry, it was by 6 reduced for each active minion. Now it's increased damage reduction by 18% when you have no minions. And each active minion reduces the bonus by 2%. And it's the same, it's just being worded differently. Base life to max life, base life to max life. Wrathma's Vigor, which used to be increasing max life, and after being healthy for 12 seconds, your next blood skill overpowers, is now after being healthy for 12 seconds, the next blood skill overpowers. This time is reduced by 2 seconds each time blood orbs heal or overheal you for amount greater to these base life. Man, you were off my mind nuts, man. Shadow Blight. Used to be previously shadow damage affects enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds. You and your minions do 10% bonus damage to enemies with Shadow Blight. Every 10th time enemies see Shadow Blight from you or your minions, while they're affected by Shadow Blight, they take an additional shadow damage. Now it's shadow damage inflicts enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds. Every 10th time they're affected by Shadow Blight, they take an additional shadow damage, and the damage of Shadow Blight is increased by your shadow damage over time bonus. So it's the same idea, it's not also being increased by your shadow dot damage. Transfusion was blood orbs also heal your minions. Now it's a lucky hit. Blood skills have a 9% chance to hit to spawn a blood orb. Which makes sense because blood orbs is now passively heal your minions by passive. Gruesome Mending used to be well below 50% life, you receive more healing. Now it's just receive more healing. The duration of Inspiring Leader has been reduced. So the healthy duration requirement has been reduced. So it's a buff to it. This is a huge nerf to burn spell, but still probably one of the best nodes in the game. Book of the Dead, this is your class stuff, right? Skeleton Warriors bonus, if you sacrifice them, is you gain 20 all res. This is really good actually. Plus base damage buff to skeletons if you use them. Golems will increase massively. Attack-wise. Massive. Just massive. Raised skeletons. Skeleton priest duration increased to 8 seconds, and total healing was increased. Paragon. Man, Necro is getting a lot of changes. A lot more than I thought it would, because I thought Necro was in a really good state already. Necro is definitely a favorite, huh? Paragon. Magic. So Mage Paragon Glyph additional bonus. It used to be Skeleton Mages gain res to all elements. Now it's all minions gain res to all elements. Warrior Paragon used to be increased armor to Skeleton Warriors. Now it's all minions. Infused Caster used to be Skeleton Mage resist to all elements. Now it's minions resist to all elements. And before it was Golems resist to all elements. Now it's also minions to all elements. So any Paragon node that was specifically one minion type is now all minions. Plus minion armor on Paragon nodes has been increased from 4% to 8%, and 2 to 4 on Magic nodes. Warrior armor on Paragon nodes has been increased from 6.5 to 14. All this is just a ton of tankiness minions, all of it. Golem armor has been increased. Total percent armor while golems are active has been increased massively. The Hawken Monstrosity Legend node is damage increased yet again for the Golem. Skeleton Warrior damage is increased on that node. Mage Skeleton damage increased on that node. Golem damage increased again on that node. Basically, anything that has to do with Paragon minions are just drastically better. Drastically better. Just damage buffs after damage buff. The Corporal Rare Glyph was Paragon nodes within range, grant 40% bonus to physical damage and damage reduction. Now it's all magic nodes within range, have their defenders increased by 150. The Wither Legendary node, the description now displays your current chance to trigger and the current value of bonus damage, so it's easy to tell if it's good or not. Blood buff used to be attacks that guarantee overpower, do increase overpower damage, and now it's all overpower attacks do increase overpower damage. Bone Graft is hitting enemies with bone skills increase your damage by 1% and your maximum essence by 3. Up to 24, now it's down to 16, so it's a nerf for the Bone Spike build. Changed Wither Legendary node scaling from willpower to intelligence. They changed some node scaling from willpower to intelligence, which should just make it way easier to scale. Overall, it seems like basically TLDR is minions fuck now. Bone Spear a little nerfed. Unique items. The Blood Artisan Cuirass, which is when you pick up a blood orb, a free bone spirit spawned, has a total armor AFX replace a bonus max life. Deathless Visage, which is where your bone spirit leaves behind echoes as it travels, has the total armor AFX replace with damage reduction. The echoes left behind by bone spirit from the unique power now do 5% increased damage for each enemy. 5% increased damage for every 30% of your crit strike damage bonus stat. So this is an idea for Bone Spear. You want multiplicative damage, you increase your crit strike bonus damage, which probably makes gearing very similar to what it already is. Damage reduce as well, a small nerf. Blood Scream, which is your darkness effects chill enemies for 40%. The damage the first enemy effects was replaced with bonus intelligence, which is really good. Sheer amount of darkness increased from 40 to 100, and your unique power has the following added effect. Darkness skills do 50% bonus damage to frozen enemies. The Blood Surge, where you cast a mini nova on your minions, now has summoning skill damage increased by 100%. Overpowered damage effects replaced with essence cost reduction, and the damage bonus was buffed. Black River, which is a corpse explosion consumed with the 4 additional corpses, now does damage to healthy enemy effects replaced with bonus ranks of all corpse skills. Pretty good. Damage to this enemy's effects replaced with bonus ranks of the Howled Flesh passive. The Shield, we have an active Bone Storm. Hitting an unaffected enemy has a chance to spawn an additional storm at their location. Has the damage to this enemy's effects replaced with bonus life. Mendlin, which I know is super nuts for Necros. So when you have 7 more minions, you can gain 10% chance to empower your minions on lucky hit. It no longer requires 7 more minions. You just now have the bonus where you just have a chance to empower all your minions, which is a big buff to Golem. Like fitting Golem in any build is just much more doable now. Aspects. The Hawken aspect will no longer appear on rings. Instead, it will appear on helmets, chest armor, belts. So it's moving from utility maybe to defensive. Tattoo aspect, which is the Blood Riv one, has its damage reduced. The damage penalty reduced. So it's a damage buff. The Empowering Reaper one, which is the Sever, to have a chance to pull a Blight. Big damage boost. Hardening Bones is just your minions have increased damage reduction. No more requirement on number of minions. So also just really good for any minion build. Reanimate, which is where your skeletons gain increased damage or alive, is now also for golems. It's for all minions. Coldbringer's aspect is every 8 seconds your cold skeleton mages cast Blizzard. It's now any skeleton mages. Potent Blood is while full life, blood orbs grant essence. It's now while healthy, blood orbs grant essence. So getting essence from blood orbs has a much bigger range now. All in all, Necro is looking kind of nuts. Min and Necro is going to be very good, I think. I think Min and Necro is going to be a very, very good passive boss killing build. Rogue, also getting a ton of changes despite it being in a good spot, which is good. I'm excited about it, but as a barb, I'm a little salty. The damaging of an enemy with a marksman or cut third skill has a chance to summon a shadow clone, is getting a bonus ranks of all core skills increased by 100%. Shadow clone damage increased by 150%, and damage to volatile enemies replaced with bonus dexterity, which is really good changes in my opinion. But I don't actually play this class, I don't know. Condemnation, which is your core skills do increased damage while spending 3 column points. It's getting a quick strike chance against injured enemies replaced with quick strike damage. Wind Force, which is the hit step and have a chance to do double damage knocked by the target, is getting core skill damage effects increased. Damage to this enemy is replaced with ranks of concussion passive, and lucky hit chance to do double damage on knockback enemies is increased by 10%. Sky Hunter, which is the bow, where your first direct damage you deal to enemies guaranteed crit strike, is being changed. The first direct damage you deal to enemy is a guaranteed crit strike. If you have the maximum strikes of the precision key passive when you cast a core skill, that skill will gain 20% bonus crit strike damage, and you gain 5 to 10 fury. Is that energy? Cowl of the Nameless, which is you gain 15 to 20% increased lucky hit chance, is maximum energy effects replaced with bonus ranks of imbuement skills at up to 1 rank above normal value. So this is really good for imbuement skills now. The dexterity effects is replaced with damage reduction from close enemies. Eagle Horn used to be Penetrating Shot has an 8% chance to fire an arrow that bounces off walls and hitting enemies become vulnerable. It's now 8% chance to bounce off walls. Damaging 5 enemies with the shot will cause the next one to make enemies hit vulnerable. So it's no longer hitting enemies from behind, it's just not hitting enough of them to make them vulnerable. Eyes in the dark. Damage to enemies affected by trap skills increase. Damage to elites replaced with max life. Dodge chance replaced with damage reduction. And unique power now has additional increased damage of death trap by 50%. Your range of arrows is always imbued with all imbuements. Now has ultimate score damage increased by 200%. Cooldown reduction effects replaced with range of arrow. Cooldown reduction at 300% normal value, which is a lot. Extra damage with imbued skill effects replaced with move speed. Whoops. Okay, skills. Primary Blade Shift upgrade. The description has been updated to while Blade Shift is active, you gain all res and reduce the duration of incoming control effects. Blade Shift. Luck edge chance increased by 15%, and Blade Shift now grants 20% movement speed bonus immediately. Heartseeker crit strike chance bonus increased to 5% per stack. It's now capped at 15, so it's just easy to get the stacks. Luck edge chance increased by 10% force for arrow. Dark Shroud now requires at least 2 active shadows, down from 4 to get its crit strike bonus. Cow Trap's duration increased by 1 second. Enhanced Smoke Grenade damage taken increased by 5%. Passives. Impetuous distance for damage buff reduced from 15 to 12. Now increases damage your next basic attack. Victimize damage increased by 1/20% damage with vulnerable bonus. Close quarter combat damage calculation upgrade. It's now damaging a close enemy with marksman or cutthroat skills grants a 10% attack speed bonus for 8 seconds. While both attack speed bonuses are active, your damage die is increased by 40% of the total amount of your damage versus crowd control bonus. Paragon changes. The Eldritch Bounty legendary node is the one where imbued attacks to give resistances. Now it's when you attack imbued skill, you get +3 max resistances and 20% increased damage for that imbued element. Pride Rare Glyph was Paragon nodes of range have a bonus physical damage, is now bonus to all rare nodes of range. And the No Witness legendary node used to be your ultimate skills do increased damage. Now it's your ultimate skills gain an additional 10% increased damage from your damage with ultimate bonus. Aspects. The one when you damage elite with basic skill generates fury. Energy. Keep saying the barb terms. Energy gain when hitting elite is increased from 7 to 9. The chilled frozen shadow imbued one, damage increase buffed. The damaging a poison enemy with shadow imbued, damage buff. Dark Shroud triggers. So if Dark Shroud would be removed, you explode, damage buff. And using an agility skill reduces the cooldown of your next subterfuge skill. Is increased, the cooldowns increase, the durations increase. Alright, Sorks. Last class here, Sorks. Glittering Firebolt. Used to be crit strikes to Firebolt increases the burn damage you deal to an enemy by 20% for 4 seconds. Now, its Firebolt increases the burn damage you deal to an enemy by 25% for 3 seconds. So it used to be crit strikes to Firebolt, now it's just Firebolt, right? Just baseline Firebolt makes you do even more damage than before. Don't need crits. Incinerate bonus damage dealt ramp up time reduced from 4 to 2. So Shattering skill ramps up much faster. Enhanced Frozen Orb. The damage threshold has been reduced. The duration has been reduced. And it now explodes against elites and does more damage against elites by itself. Meteor effective is increased by 10%, which is ball lightning is adjusting the maximum number of crackling energy generated per cast from 1 to 2. Hydra was increased from 12% damage to 60%, which is a huge boost. It's like 500%, right? That's a 500% increase to Hydra. Supreme Currents, additional functionality, crackling energy pulses 25% faster while unstable currents is active. Passives. Point Warding. Previously, it was after casting a non-basic skill, you gain all res. In addition, resistance to that skill. Now it's after casting a non-basic skill, you gain all res, more of it, 3% more res, and maximum resistance to that skill element. That is actually kind of interesting for bossing ideas. Align elements is where you gain 3% damage reduction against elites, which you haven't taken one. It has a bonus functionality. This bonus persists for 2 seconds after taking a damage. So you take reduced damage for the first hit and then 2 seconds afterwards as well. The enchanted glyph used to be for each skill equipped in your enchantment slots, you gain resistance to that skill's element. Now it's for each skill equipped in your enchantment slot, you gain 5% max res to that skill's element. Max res. That's really valuable. Keep that in mind. Max res is insanely valuable. The fact you can get that easily is great. Galvanic Catalyst for a node. 17% crackling energy damage changed to 10% lightning damage. This is a big boost to everything lightning. Surrounding and crackling energy damage, magic nodes will change to 5% lightning damage. So they're changing the Paragon board that was crackling lightning to just lightning damage. Winter Rare. Paragon nodes within range have 50% bonus to the core damage and damage reduction modifiers. Now it's rare Paragon nodes within range have a bonus to effects. So it's no longer just cold, it's now all nodes. So it's good for all cases. The Searing Heat legendary node used to be casting Fireball or Meteor, increase the crit strike chance of farther cast of that skill by 5% additive for 5 seconds up to 15%. Now, into your fire skills have the crit strike chance increased by 10%, and the direct damage is increased by an amount equal to 10% of the total amount of your bonus damage of fire, up to a maximum of 30%. So this is the same idea of the builds. You can increase your damage multiplicatively by getting bonus damage of fire, which is really good because you're already getting bonus damage right with fire, and now you're also getting crit and more damage with second fire. It's going to be a good catch-all node for fire builds. Burning Instinct. Your burning damage is increased by 40% of your crit strike damage, farther increased by 5% for every 20 intellect you have. Interesting. Your burn damage deals bonus damage equal to 10% of your total amount of crit strike damage bonus, plus 1% for every 75 intellect you have. So this is a way of making it so your crit strike damage will scale your burn damage. Because burn damage doesn't inherently scale off of it, and now you can. Stunning close enemies restore 10 mana is what it used to be. Now it's after spending 100 mana, your next cast of Chain Lightning or Charge Bolts makes enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds and grants you 10% of your maximum mana. This mana cost requirement is reduced by mana cost reduction bonuses. That's a way for Lightning Sorks to get vulnerable, which is nice. It used to be your conjuration skills have a 5% reduced cooldown on mana cost per generation skill. Now it's your conjuration skills have a 10% reduced cooldown on mana cost, this flatline. And they also do bonus damage equal to 3% of the total amount of your bonus damage of cold, fire, and lightning. Right, same idea. You stack cold, fire, and lightning bonus damages to get multiplicative damage for your conjuring build, which I think could be kind of nuts, potentially. Previously, it used to be dealing cold damage to vulnerable enemies increase your lucky hit chance by 1% for 5 seconds. Now it's you deal bonus damage to vulnerable enemies equal to 10% of your total amount of your bonus damage of cold, up to a maximum of 30%. This makes sense for a cold build. Cold build is vulnerable, right? So there's more damage to vulnerable when you do cold stuff. Ice Fall used to be killing a frozen enemy grants you 15% max life as barrier. Now it's your frost skills do a 15% bonus quick strike damage to vulnerable enemies. This bonus is doubled against frozen enemies who are vulnerable. Same idea. Really good because vulnerable is already baked in the cold. Aspects. Piercing Static, which used to be of Static Cling. Legendary power has been swapped with the Staff of Lamb Essence. Previous power was your cost of charge bolts have a 15% chance to be attracted to nearby enemies and last longer. Now it's charge bolts pierce, but do less damage to targets hit after the first hit. Which is really good because you attack speed is enough in a room, it's going to bounce hit the same enemy multiple times. Right? The aspect name has been changed to of piercing, yeah. Of Engulf in Flames. Used to be while enemies are infected by more damage over time than the total life, you deal increased damage to them. Now it's you deal bonus burn damage to enemies who are below half their total life, or 80 to 100% if they're affected by more damage over time than the total life. So it's this additional functionality. Execute damage. Staff of Endless Rage, which is the every third cast of Fireball offs 2 additional projectiles. The lucky hit chance to slow effects is replaced with fire damage, which is great because that was a bad lucky hit for you guys. The unique power now also grants each third cast of Fireball bonus damage. Enemies that die while frozen have a chance to unleash a Frost Nova, that the Ice Hurt bears. Is now damage to injured enemies replaced with damage reduction, and intelligence replaced with bonus life. Yeah. Isu's Heirloom, which is the crit strike chances increased by movement speed. The slow duration was replaced with quick strike damage, and evade grants movement speed inherent effects duration increased from 1 to 2 seconds. The Staff of Lamb Essence, which was the unique that is now becoming an aspect. That old aspect is now this unique thing, right? You cast charge bolts, have a chance to attract enemies and last longer. Right? They're kind of swapping places and buffing them a bit. So they're making a more desirable part of it, more attainable of aspects, but together they're gonna be kind of good together. The staff is also getting damage and injured enemies replaced with quick strike damage. Your fireball now bounces the travel gloves. It's having a lucky chance to restore resource increased by 50%, and the damage penalty is being reduced, which will go really hand in hand with the fireball change. And a lot of the burn changes, honestly. Esidora's Overflowing Cameo, which is upon collecting Kraken energy, is a 50% chance to release a Lightning Nova. Non-physical damage effects replaced with cooldown reduction, which is great. Kraken energy effects increased by 50%. Lightning Nova's base damage increased by 100%, and the Lightning Nova does multiplicative damage increase for every 100 intelligence you have. So that's a huge boost to crit Sork for Lightning Dam. Flame Scar, which is while channeling Incinerate. Now the ranks are increased, and the non-physical damage effects is replaced with mana cost reduction, which is really good, actually. The Oculus, which is you get a teleport enchantment, and you're attacking a random location. Lucky hit chance is being replaced with damage. So this is going to be a damage stick now. Yeah, a shit ton of damage for using this. That's the upside. All right, I'm almost done. Battle Pass Smoldering Ashes Tear is now auto redeem. Don't have to keep going back and checking to see. God bless. Requirement for Battle Pass Smoldering Ashes have been reduced by 15 levels on average, and you now get 700 platinum instead of 666. Bug fixes. Ton of bug fixes. I'm not gonna go through all the bug fixes. They're here if you want to see them. Ton of bug fixes. Some bug fixes for rapid play, bug fixes for dungeons. Just bug fixes. Ton of bug fixes. Gameplay fixes. Ton of fixes. This is a never-ending amount of fixes. Holy shit. We also got a look at the new dungeons. They're going to be in the Nightmares rotation. I'm not going to take too long in there. I knew I read that they actually don't have every unique, and they're gonna have to add the rest of the uniques later on. They forgot to add some of the patch notes, so they're gonna update and amend it, but I don't think that's out yet.